It's Thursday, it's nearly the weekend, and time for the latest transfer rumours from the Premier League and beyond, and I'll be giving you some other news too, but mainly what I'll be talking about is how Tottenham are in talks with a top-class Premier League number 9. Manchester United are considering buying one of Spain's best forwards, and Chelsea, yet again, are in the market for spending huge on another goalkeeper. But will he be as big a flop as Kepa, who of course they spent £75 million on? This is your daily Premier League transfer news. Please do press like on the video, give me a subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to become a member, only £1 a month to help me make this daily content for you. All the details in the description box. You can become a pro member on YouTube or a Patreon member. But let's get into it, and starting of course with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur. Lots of chat today that Ivan Toney, his agent, is in talks with Tottenham Hotspur over a potential move. This is a rumour that will not go away, and backed up by the fact that today, actually, Tottenham seem to have leaked again that they will listen to offers for Richarlison. Is there a bit of a number 9 swap on the cards? By which I mean maybe Richarlison going to another English club, because he has said this week on his social media that he will not be leaving England this summer, and then Ivan Toney coming in from Brentford to give us the kind of back-to-goal strength that really we've missed all season. It really does strike me that with Ange Postecoglou's system, what Tottenham need more than anything is the ability to keep the ball in the final third so that pressure can be sustained and attacks can be sustained, and that high line where our back four, let's face it, is about 10 yards forward of the halfway line when we're attacking. That can be of a benefit rather than something to worry about if we lose possession as easily as we have been doing this season, and then the transition comes over the top of our fullbacks. Ivan Toney, for me, really interesting player. He's clearly got the attitude required to make it kind of at a big club. I really believe that, but does that attitude sometimes go too far? He's slagged off Brentford before. He's said that he thinks he should be playing at Real Madrid, and of course there is the small matter of him not having scored in the final 12 Premier League games of the season. If you're a Spurs fan and you had the option to get rid of Richarlison and bring in Ivan Toney, would you make that move? Do you think it would benefit Spurs next season? I think it's an interesting one. Watch this space. In more Tottenham news, and again, another rumour that won't go away, we're continuing to monitor the Conor Gallagher situation apparently, but a deal is seen as harder to do this summer than it was a year ago. However, in other news, The Independent have said that Aston Villa are sniffing around Gallagher as well. And that's a bit of a worry for me, because Aston Villa and Spurs now very much fishing in the same waters transfer-wise, especially now Villa in the Champions League this season. They will have more money potentially to spend once they deal with any kind of profit and sustainability rules issues they have towards the end of June. Once they get past that, maybe they've had to sell a homegrown player of their own, they will then have a big chunk of money to spend. And if they got Gallagher from under our noses, I'm not sure that's one I'd be that happy with, because obviously Tottenham have been interested in him for so long. What I will say is, what isn't really written about as much now as it always used to be, it is very difficult for Spurs to buy players from Chelsea. Abramovich would never allow it. I think the only player who left Chelsea for Spurs in the whole Abramovich era was Carlo Cudicini, and that was on a free transfer. Now, obviously, Clearlake and Todd Bowley are the kind of owners of Chelsea now, and I don't think they necessarily care as much where they get their money from. But I do think that Gallagher deal will be difficult, and I wouldn't want to see him go to Aston Villa, because I think he'd really improve them. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Do you think Gallagher is the right player to come in for Spurs? I think personally he is a perfect press-resistant, half-turn-taking, good-finishing midfielder for Ange Postecoglou's style. Some more transfer gossip. Manchester United, Chelsea and Spurs are apparently all chasing Birmingham City attacking midfielder Menzi Mazwi, 18 years old, out of contract this summer. So Spurs clearly continuing to kind of have their dual recruitment purpose of looking for some of the best players around, particularly with a kind of eye on the homegrown talent at the top end, kind of where you're looking between your 40 and 60 million pound mark, and then also looking for opportunist signings at the bottom end and free transfers. That's why we were rumoured to be in for like Lloyd Kelly and Tosin, and now Menzi Mazwi from Birmingham as well. But if Man United and Chelsea are in for him, you've got to think they'll be able to pay him more wages. So this one remains to be seen. Other news coming out of Spurs: All the talk over the last 24 hours is that we will trigger the extension year option on Son Heung-min's contract, which will mean he'll be under a contract with the club until 2026. For me, that is a no-brainer. You keep Son Heung-min at the club for as long as possible. You make him an ambassador, you give him a coaching role, you keep him as the face of the club forever. He is our captain. He has been an absolute legend for the club in the last 10 years. And because he's so humble and so grounded and so smiley and happy, I think he's underrated as to how important he has made this growth of Tottenham Hotspur over the last decade or so. Harry Kane got a lot of the plaudits, and rightly so, but Son Heung-min was an absolutely perfect foil for Kane, and even now that Kane has gone, 17 league goals last season for the club, and I think he can score even more next season if we get the players around him who have the technical attributes to put him in the right positions, and maybe even also, as well as that, getting him some more rest time. Maybe some more rest time against those teams where they're playing low blocks and we need to bring in players who can beat a man a little bit more and make chances in a different way. Whereas Sonny still, even at the age of, I think he's 32 now, 31, 32, even at that age, his legs are still good enough to get in behind, and he's better against those teams where a chance of getting in behind is possible. In fact, I'd say arguably he's the best finisher Spurs have had other than Kane. Certainly in my lifetime, the only thing that goes slightly against that is that chance he missed against Manchester City, which did hand them the title and didn't let Arsenal win. In other news, Milan and Saudi Arabia apparently upping their interest in Spurs right-back Emerson Royal. I've said it before in a video, I want Emerson Royal's agent. I do not know how he gets linked with the likes of AC Milan. What I will say, and I've said it many times, he is a great right-back defender. He's not good going forward, but he defends well. He's strong in the tackle. He works incredibly hard, and he knows what he has to do. But whether he is a Serie A player, I'm not sure. Maybe it'll benefit him to have a bit more time on the ball. It seems to me a little too early in his career to go to Saudi Arabia, but as ever, money talks, so you just never know. Another potential outgoing and another right back. Genoa apparently want to sign Jed Spence on a full-time permanent basis after his loan there in the last 6 months. However, the £8.5 million option to buy him is something that they deem to be too much. Now, this I think is quite ironic, because what Daniel Levy tends to do when he gets people in on loan is he will negotiate an initial option to buy for a certain fee, and then once the loan comes to the end, he says, actually, I don't think we want to pay that much. And now Genoa are doing that to Daniel Levy. I've said all summer so far, and it hasn't been a long summer yet, but let's hope the weather improves, but I've said Spurs need to be getting towards £10 million for as many of these kind of squad players as possible. But with Jed Spence, it's been such a disappointing signing. He's played so few games for Spurs that I would accept anywhere around £5 or £6 million, to be honest. He's clearly not in the manager's plans. He's clearly upset a few managers, not just at Spurs, but also when he had his loan spell at Leeds, he upset Daniel Farke, the manager there. So I would just take the money and run with Jed Spence, and hopefully he's got talent. Hopefully he can go to Genoa or somewhere else and really prove himself again. But as with Tanguy and Ndombele, another player who had some question marks over his attitude even before he came to Spurs. If you remember, I think it was Neil Warnock who had Jed Spence previously and said to him, you'll either make it to the very top or you'll be playing non-league. And that was before he got his move to Spurs. So I think with the likes of Ndombele and Jed Spence, take whatever you can, let them go elsewhere and see if they can do better there than they did at Spurs. Ryan Sessegnon, as we know, left the club, was leaving the club this summer on a free transfer. Ipswich Town, under Kieran McKenna, who's about to sign his new deal, are rumoured to be lining up the possibility of taking him on. I think that would be a great move for Ryan Sessegnon. If he could get fit, and if he could play at a club like Ipswich regularly, he could become their most important player, arguably. One of those kind of players where the manager says, just get it out to Ryan as much as you can. That will bring his confidence up to the level where he needs it to be the talent and kind of fulfill the talent that he undoubtedly has. It didn't work at Spurs, which is really gutting. We put a lot of money in to Ryan Sessegnon's career, transfer fee and then wages outlay, but he just got injured too many times. And the last few times I saw him at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it was very sad to see because he lost all his confidence and then he'd be substituted and he always trudged off around the outside of the field. And for some reason, that just made it somehow look even worse. He's a definite talent. He's got it in him to become an England player, I'm sure of it. But it just wasn't right at Spurs. And I think Ipswich would be an excellent move for Ryan Sessegnon. So I really hope he gets fit and that works out for him. Or if not Ipswich, somewhere similar. I'm sure you've seen Mickey van der Ven has been announced in the final Dutch Euro squad. Oh my God, I don't know about you, but I'm quite excited about watching the Dutch. Can you imagine if Mickey van der Ven gets in the team alongside Virgil van Dijk? What an absolutely colossal centre-half partnership that would be. Now, I know they've got Matthijs de Ligt, and he is an excellent player, but he hasn't been starting regularly this season, certainly in the back end of this season for Bayern Munich. In fact, Eric Dyer was getting in ahead of him. So I wonder what de Ligt's fitness is like. I wonder what his motivation is like. And I tell you what, if I was the Dutch manager, I would want someone like Mickey van der Ven with his absolute raw pace and ability to read the game and the balance that he gives on the left side of a centre-back pairing. I would have him in my team. The only thing I would say is, please, Mickey, I want you to play in the Euros, but do not get injured. Please, you've had a couple of difficult injuries this season so far. We missed you so much. You've been the best signing we made last summer, maybe in the last few summers. And I think he is such an exciting player and has such an incredible future for Tottenham Hotspur. Some youth team and academy news coming out of Tottenham in the last 12 hours or so. Academy director Simon Davis has done an interview. He went on to speak a little bit about Mikey Moore and how talented he is, but how we shouldn't get too excited too early for him because he's still only 16 years old, not yet 17. But in terms of general academy stuff and how the players are going to make it through into the first team, here are the quotes from Simon Davis. He says, I speak to Ange regularly, and he's got a real thirst for youth development. He understands the fans and the club's ambitions to have several, not just one, but several of our own in the first team. But it's my job to make sure that those players are at the level of Ange. It is not a given. We're Tottenham. We want to be a Champions League club that's fighting at the top end. So we have to make sure the players are at the right level. It's not fair to ask a manager at any club to give young players a go when they're not at the level. I know that Ange is ready for young players to go into the first team. Now, for me, that's incredibly exciting and really mirrors something I've been saying all season. One of the things that happens a lot when you're a fan of a club, and especially when results are kind of up and down, so maybe you have a few losses in a row, like Spurs did at the back end of the season, is that the fan base are desperate to get academy players in. They're thinking to themselves, well, if we're going to lose anyway with these high kind of paid players who've been at the club for a long time, squad players, why don't we just give the young players a chance? But what Simon Davis is saying here is that they've got to be at the level required by Ange Postecoglou, and I completely agree. I know it's pretty simple and cliche to say, Ange Postecoglou sees these guys in training every week. So does Simon Davis. But you can ruin a young player's whole career if you get them in too early and they're not ready. So I know it's hard. I know we look at clubs like Liverpool who brought in a number of young players in the past couple of years under Jurgen Klopp and they've succeeded. But he has been there for 9 years. This is Ange Postecoglou's first year. So Jurgen Klopp has had 9 years of talent to pick and choose from as to who is ready to come up into the first team when there are injuries and when there is bad form. This is Postecoglou's first year and his first year of working with Academy Director Simon Davis. So I'm afraid we have to be a little more patient, and as Simon Davis says, even about some of the most talented young players, Jamie Donnelly, Alfie Dorrington and of course Mikey Moore, we've got to wait until they're definitely ready. And when they are, Simon Davis is sure that Ange Postecoglou will bring them into the first team. And of course, Mikey Moore, only 16, has already seen Premier League first team minutes for Spurs. If that is not a backing of his ability from Ange Postecoglou, I do not know what is. So moving on to some of the transfer rumours from elsewhere in the Premier League. Manchester United are interested in Joshua Zirkzee. He has a £34 million release clause that will be valid between July the 1st and August the 15th. This is according to Gazzetta in Italy. Inter Milan equally are interested in taking Aaron Wan-Bissaka from Manchester United. In initial reports suggesting that could be something like a fee of around £10 million. Now, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, another player like Emerson Royale, who I spoke about earlier, he's an excellent defender. In fact, I'd say Wan-Bissaka is one of the best one-on-one defenders at right back that I've seen from England in the last few decades. But he's not great going forward. He's improved going forward this season, I'd say, but he's not great going forward. So I'm surprised that £10 million fee is being kind of bandied about. That seems quite low. I'm not sure what Wan-Bissaka's contract situation is. Maybe he's getting into the last year or two of his contract, in which case that would make more sense. But of course, as we know, Italy do not have a lot of money to spend. None of the clubs in Serie A do. So maybe they're trying to lowball United in a moment when they know that Man United are looking to have a bit of a clear out. So that'll be interesting. Also, Man United news, they are considering a swap deal between Mason Greenwood and João Felix. Felix is only 24 years old, Greenwood 22. We all know why they want to get Mason Greenwood off the books. I've spoken about it earlier this week. It's a very difficult situation. João Felix, clearly an absolute talent, has already gone for some huge transfer fees in his young career. And obviously did get a few months on loan at Chelsea as well. He looked so good there, but also wasn't quite able to finish it off. I wonder if that was like a lack of strength for the Premier League. But I do think if he played for the right club and had an arm around his shoulder and given the confidence, then he could be a really great Premier League player. That'll be an interesting one to see if Manchester United go through with that. However, one of Jim Ratcliffe's things that he said when he kind of signed on as new CEO at Manchester United when Ineos took their percentage stake in the club was he didn't want to sign any Galacticos. He felt like they'd made the mistake of signing big name players just for the sake of it, and maybe João Felix falls into that category. So if you're a Man United fan, let me know what you think about that rumour. Another link for Manchester United, as well as Liverpool and Arsenal, and Spurs have been interested in this player too. I've spoken about him in the last few days. Apparently, Man United, Liverpool and Arsenal will battle with Vincent Kompany's Bayern Munich to try and sign Leeds teenager Archie Gray. As I said earlier this week, Leeds are going to need to sell a couple of players to try and balance the books. And Archie Gray is a very talented young player who can play right back or central midfield, and a lot of big clubs sniffing around him. I know Spurs are interested in him too, so that'll be interesting. I mentioned at the top of the show, Chelsea looking at another big money new goalkeeper. This time it's Diogo Costa from FC Porto. I really love Costa. I've been looking at him for a couple of years. I used to be a goalkeeper, so I like keeping my eye on the keepers. I think he's so good. He's Portuguese #1. And Porto are willing to sell him if an offer comes in that is deemed satisfactory. I think that would be around £50 million minimum. Manchester City also apparently interested in him, which scans because Ederson has started making some very strange social media posts about his future after the kind of love-in that Stefan Ortega was given after he made some saves while Ederson was injured towards the back end of the season. So that'll be interesting to see whether there's a goalkeeper merry-go-round this summer too. I mentioned Vincent Kompany's Bayern Munich there. One of the rumours in the last 12 hours is that they're looking at Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace, who only joined Palace in January from Blackburn, and as I've mentioned this week, has made it into Gareth Southgate's preliminary England squad. He's clearly a baller, highly rated around Europe, and apparently Kompany wants to make him one of his first signings at Bayern Munich. I'm sure you will have seen Burnley announce Kompany leaving yesterday, and Bayern Munich then announced him arriving. His quotes there, Vincent Kompany's quotes about joining Bayern: "I'm looking forward to the challenge at FC Bayern. As a coach, you have to stand for who you are as a person. I love having possession of the ball, being creative, and we also have to be aggressive on the pitch. And brave. I'm now looking forward to the most basic things, working with the players, building a team. When the foundation is in place, success will follow." I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's undoubtedly a good coach and loves to get his teams playing great front foot possession football, but his only elite level coaching experience was relegation from the Premier League. So, what happens if Bayern Munich lose a couple of games? What happens if they have a bad start? What happens if they let Leverkusen or Stuttgart or Borussia Dortmund get far ahead of them? Or, dare I say it, what happens if they go out early of the Champions League? I don't think Vincent Kompany will have the collateral to deal with that if that happens. Next rumour from Europe, PSG have sent an offer apparently of €100 million for Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. What a player who I undoubtedly cannot pronounce his name correct, but he's such a brilliant winger. I love him. Napoli apparently going to decide. They've got Antonio Conte coming in, and it's reported that he will have a budget of around €230 million for new players. Now, I wonder if that is if Kvaratskhelia goes out and gets €100 million in, and Osimhen leaves, which is a big rumour as well, another 100 million or more coming in for him. As I've said earlier in the week, Lukaku, the favourite to replace Victor Osimhen at Napoli. They are going to decide whether they accept that big money for two of their best players. Arsenal apparently in the market for a new striker as well. RB Leipzig's Benjamin Sesko, top of their wanted list. And the latest rumours coming out from The Athletic and other journalists about Arsenal this summer is that they're not really expecting superstar signings, but they will strengthen their squad. I'm not sure about that, because obviously Arsenal last summer, they really went in big on Declan Rice. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did go in big on one other kind of first team player to really improve the first team, but let's see what happens. West Ham under Julian Lopetegui, they're looking at a new goalkeeper apparently, and Wes Foderingham is rumoured to be going there. in other news about West Ham, they are rivaling Everton in talks with Burnley over a deal for 22-year-old French defender Maxime Esteve. Aston Villa, West Ham and Arsenal are looking at USA under-20s international Rokas Puskas, apparently. What a name to live up to there. And in some managerial news, Ruud van Nistelrooy, ex-Manchester United and Real Madrid centre forward. He is the latest man being considered as an option to replace Enzo Maresca at Leicester. Maresca, obviously, joining Chelsea. They're just waiting for the deals for his backroom staff to go through before announcing that. Van Nistelrooy was last at PSV, where he won the Cup and the Johan Cruyff Shield there. So he's had a decent start in management. He was always a very kind of single-minded striker, so I can see him being a good manager, knows what he wants, etc. I'm sure you've heard this, some news on the Carabao Cup. They're going to use a seeding system to keep the Champions League sides and Europa League sides apart in the early rounds of the competition. So yet again, another example of the big clubs getting benefit from the kind of money tree that hangs down from the FA's various different competitions. And just a little something of light relief to end with. Kyle Walker has announced that he is starting a new podcast on BBC Sounds with Love Island presenter Chris Hughes, or Love Island star and sports presenter Chris Hughes. It's called You'll Never Beat Kyle Walker. And apparently it promises an insight into what it's like being a top-level footballer and what it takes to win. He's not the first of the Premier League footballers to start podcasts, is he? Obviously, there's the West Ham-based one with Mikel Antonio does one, doesn't he? Where he took the mickey out of Richarlison, and then that led to it didn't lead to it, but Richarlison talked about his mental health issues, and then 6 months later, Mikel Antonio says he has mental health issues, which is a bit contradictory somehow. With Kyle Walker's new podcast, it seems a bit like naive timing to me, and I think it's fair to say from when he wrote a tweet announcing the podcast, some of the tweet replies that he got from that announcement, I think kind of sum up some of the naive timing. So I thought I'd just read out a few I saw. First one, worst captain ever, get out of my club. Man City fans a bit angry with him after he, according to them, had a bad FA Cup final performance. Certainly won't beat you in fathering illegitimate kids was another comment. The only insight we want is when you're leaving, from another Manchester City fan. Such a humble podcast name was one reply. I thought that was quite funny. It is called You'll Never Beat Kyle Walker, which I know it is a chant, but yeah, agreed. Not the most humble of podcast names. And then finally, don't know who's the bigger cheat, you or your club. So Kyle Walker getting a fair bit of abuse for releasing this podcast now. I'll give it a listen and let you know what it's like. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do give the video a like. Press subscribe if you haven't already. And with the weekend coming up, I'll be back with some more transfer rumours and Premier League news soon. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Goodbye.